All right. Hey, finally live. Yeah, I had the page up for too long, so I had to refresh it and that, but to get back over here. But anyway, yeah, you're at Folk You Zeus. Thanks for tuning in. This is a regular Sunday thing. Done it. I can't remember how many weeks to do it. I don't really count too well as far as looking back. Always look forward. So I think it's about our sixth one or something. A discussion that we're going to have tonight. So thanks. We looks like we got somebody out there. So I'm trying. This is something that we're just starting and getting rolling, doing various discussions around music, art, and culture, and how music and art affect culture and reflect it, and also guide it. So we're going to start talking about various things within the realm of arts as a whole. Most of you know that I'm a musician. If you don't know that, I actually do have another, and I really haven't plugged it on this channel yet, but I have Mark Zeus Music. So if you're interested in any of that, and I also did a major travel log thing of a tour that I took, and that's all on there. So you can go on my other channel as well, Mark Zeus Music. Uh, and that would be YouTube/Mark Zeus Music. Whereas this channel is youtube.com/at Mark, not Mark, excuse me, at Folk You Zeus. So there was a time, I guess, that they decided to um, add that at symbol over the last year or so. So I don't know why they did it, but that's the way YouTube and Google are working. So we'll just have to deal with it. Okay, today's title is Copycats and the S.O.S. And we'll get into the S.O.S. a little bit later, but we're going to start with that first concept and that first. Let me see what if Lady Google has a definition of copycat, just to have fun. I think most people out there probably know, but it's always fun to see what the heck Google's got to say. Copycat.
Copycat is a 1995 movie
It's a
directed by
movie.
John Amiel, starring Sigourney.
They're trying to sell movies thing. So anyway, well, we're not going to deal with that. But actually, the movie, The Copycat, it's taken as a they borrowed from the general term, uh, as someone who sees something and decides to make something else, makes whatever it is. And we're going to do it from the artistic standpoint, a work of art. So you're going to copy something exactly, or reflect it in some way to copy it. So if you're a person that does that, so if you're a person who does that, you're a copycat. Meaning, if I did something, back in the day, in school or something, somebody would copy from you on a test or something. That would be one way to be a copycat. It's a sinister way, you might say, or just in general, somebody imitates the way you dress. They could be considered a copycat. So we're going to get that within the realm of arts as a whole. So if you are a copycat, you're imitating. So we're going to talk about imitation. And there's an old saying or a proverb is that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and meaning if you're going to imitate someone or something, it's because you either love that person or thing, or you admire it, or you really it's something that really impresses you. You're very impressed, so you're going to imitate. You know, I would argue that, yeah, kind of. In certain such senses, we use imitation, impersonation to what would you call it? Uh, Criticize. You can use it to criticize or to kind of make fun of someone. But and then that statement kind of like says too, well, if you're willing to go the route of criticizing someone, by imitating them, you're respecting at least who they are and what characteristics they have. Or if you copy a painting, let's say we're going to start getting into that. You start now. The reason I copy a Renoir is not because I'm trying to make fun of Renoir, because I love his art. I love the art that he had created. So I'm going to do something that's I'm going to just copy that painting, and you do it, and a lot of times that's what you do when you go to school for art and music or whatever it is, stage, whatever. You copy uh, the characteristics and the styles of people who have been already successful or have made already made an impression. Obviously, if a piece of art is around for a couple hundred years, you know that they did something right or they were recognized as doing something right. It doesn't mean that art that has died. I shouldn't say died, but is kind of forgotten or lost, or we don't remember certain artists or certain works of art. Doesn't mean that they weren't works of art. Doesn't mean that they didn't have value. They might have value in their day. Right now they don't have value because it's just the way the market works. Value is a uh, it's something you have to compare against something else, so it's in that comparable mode where it doesn't matter if your song sells a million copies, or if you just have your friends listen to it. It's doesn't mean that the value of the art. Okay, so we don't want to mix the commercial side with the artistic side, and that's one of the things I want to do here when I'm having these discussions, is kind of break it up and saying you can be an artist and not be a commercial success. You could be a commercial success and not be an artist, and obviously that division is subjective. Where you decide to put that has to be something, and you as an artist have to recognize yourself and your peers as what is the level of competence. Might not be the exact same word, but there's certain level that you say, okay, this person is, attitude, whatever it is that this you consider is valued art to you. So this is something that within, when you do imitation, when you first learning, you're imitating to get to that point. Now, imitation implies, well, there's another. We'll go with that statement. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. There is another proverb that I just made up. Imitation is the easiest way to make a living in the arts, to make a meager living or whatever, and you can make a real good living. There are people that do that. So if you learn to imitate someone that was already popular, or if you learn to paint like someone else like that, you could do things. And I'm not sure in the visual arts world if it's very popular right now. And that's one thing hopefully we can have. Like I said, I want to get an art historian and people on the show here, so we can delve a little bit deeper into what are the trends and what's going on in that world that I don't know about. I know a little bit about it, but there's some people that spend their lives kind of figuring it out and figure out what's going to be the next step in the visual arts world. But it's the easiest way to make a living in the arts. If you we talked about theater. If you're going to do a classic, you're not going to do, if you want to fill your theater, you're not going to do the local guy it's his first play that he's written. He's got, it's not about someone famous or something, or a famous thing. It's like real maybe a slice of life thing that, it's like, okay. No, you're going to do the Music Man, or you're going to do whatever, Jesus Christ Superstar, whatever. You're going to pick something on maybe a grand level, if depending on what if you're going to do. Maybe you do Tennessee Williams if you're doing a smaller theater type thing, and so you're going to pick these um, uh, classics. You already know they're tried and true, tested as being accepted, and people have enjoyed them over the years, and so you're going to go for that. uh, it's nothing to be ashamed of, because that's what you need to do if you are actually a theater um, that has to pay the rent for the theater. You have people on staff that are paid. You have So there's a lot of expense and everything to put in these productions together. So you have to make choices. You're kind of forced to make choices that equal some sort of monetary return. All right. Some theater groups are sponsored. You know, there are sponsors, and you usually most theater groups have some sponsorship. Maybe you're both. You have to generate some income, some revenue, and then you also bringing in through grants. Um, funds to keep everything going and that and especially theaters that are trying to do the artistic trying to do different and new material and that's dependent a lot on grants and just individuals like even if you see on PBS some of the shows or they'll list all the people that donate to it and some will be like very philanthropic rich people, families, trusts, and these kinds of things that sponsor these shows, and then corporations, and then it gets into the whole politics of what can you do because you got all these, you know, different entities. You can't do a show that's kind of like anti the oil business when you when your main when you know your main is a Chevron or something. Your main contributor or backer is Chevron. So they get it, and that's a whole rabbit hole that we might go into someday regarding that. But just to give you like people get into the arts in imitating. We've touched on this in past. If you see some of the other presentations that I did, uh, you'll see that I've touched on it. But we're going to get a little deeper in it. So imitation, there's what's known as impersonation. Impersonation's more geared towards and being impersonating an individual means you become what's it called a doppelganger. uh, if you know that term, you want to kind of like make people think maybe that which one's which or whatever. It's like wow, or you do it exactly to the point. And there's a whole genre of impersonation in the in the performance arts and or comedy. Comedians. There's people that are actually impersonators that do it not so much for a comedic value, but just a nostalgic maybe value. I remember there was there was passed away last year, a great folk singer, Jim Post, and he had released 20, 30 albums over his career. He's 82 years old, passed away last September. But well, respected singer songwriter. But he decided, I don't know how many years ago, it was 20 years ago, something, and that he was going to do an impersonation act. And he did a great impersonation of Mark Twain. And most people here remember Mark Twain and from history's sort of humorist, and so writer, humorist. Uh, so a lot of sayings, Mark Twain, sayings and all that. But he did it in a theater presentation, and he put a theater presentation together that I never got a chance to see, but I knew he was doing it, and he would do it like he was from Galena, Illinois, and obviously that's right on. Most of you might not know, but it's right on the Mississippi River. And if you know about Mark Twain, he was from that area, and he wrote a lot about his author. He was an author of many books. So a lot of his books were based around his characters, and that were uh, from Mississippi base, sensibility or whatever you want to call it. Anyway, so he would do, and he made a living at it and did it. But like I said, he made a living from his songwriter, but he wanted to do this as an art, as a work of art. So you can you could do an impersonation and put your own spin on things. And but he from I saw little clips of what he was doing. It was amazing, how we don't have. I don't think we have. I think audio went back that far where we have an exact audio, but there is always a. There have been people that have kind of like impersonated in short blasts here and there, but nobody's put that together. The way that he spoke. Obviously, you have these. He was an author. You have lots of material to work with, as far as presentation, interpretation of his works. Um, but he did a great job, and like just from the clips that I've seen. So I never saw that. I think you could probably access it, the whole piece somewhere online. So, but anyway, that was like just saying that there are situations when impersonation becomes valid art. Now, there's other times that impersonation becomes just we'll go back to the concept of a shtick, where it becomes that's my shtick because I impersonate people, that thing. As comedy people, Frank Gorshin was one of my favorites back in the day in the 60s, 70s. There are people today. I don't know if it's so much. I don't see that much in comedy anymore. Um, Anybody's welcome to share that with me. I'd love to see if there's anybody really out there. You'll see that certain comedy actors and comedians will do impersonations within their act. Actually, Billy Crystal did something. These are just names I'm off the top of my head that we're throwing out. And but as right now, somebody that's contemporary, a younger or newer name that's doing impersonations as a general thing. Because I remember Frank Gorshin would come out, and that's what he would do. He put his little bits in, and he'd be those characters, and he'd do 20 characters in one bit. Uh, and so I mean, there is that, and that is art in itself to be able to do it, to do it exactly, and have some kind of a creative bent on it. I think that's the key to when you're evaluating something. I mean, when moving on, we'll move on to commercial art. Now we get into the commercial aspect of it. Like I said, impersonator is someone that gets jobs, in comedy clubs or wherever. Like I said, like Jim Post doing that impersonation within theater, and melding that with theater and some music and all that. So there's that. But the concept of commercial art. Now, commercial art, may anything is possible. Once you get to a certain, you develop that craft. As we said before, there's a certain amount of craft that goes into any art. You have to develop your craft, and you get to that point, and you're working towards developing ideas, artistic ideas, within the realm of the structure that you are given. So this is like a commercial artist will be, okay, here's the campaign, here's the, if it's an advertising thing, which is most commercial art, I would say, geared towards advertising, some kind of marketing. This is what you're given. Now you can open up, be creative, be an artist to move to that. Now that, like I said, it all depends. As in the last presentation, we said, not all depends. Are you given all the parameters? I say you have to get this, so you have to imitate what we're giving you, or reflect exactly what we're doing, or are you able to be more creative towards that, and be an artist, outside of the commercial, but still adding to the commercial value of whatever it is, the campaign that you're assigned to, or you've been hired to, or whatever you're a independent contractor, whatever it is for this company. So that's what's happening here. So in the commercial art world, mostly is, you're given a job. This is where you got to get to. This is what it has to be. It has to be 30 seconds of animation, or whatever you're given, or graphics and things that you have to develop to work with that. So commercial art, as I said, anything's possible. It allows you, once you get within the world of technology, and all, learn to get everything perfect. You could get that's more of geared towards that, looking for perfection in the what parameters you have been given. Um, now, born from, I put this down, born from technology. Now, commercial artists, that use computer graphics and get involved with that. It's something that's a learning curve. Obviously that's where the way most commercial artists work nowadays is on a computer, and they have all they have the programs and the tools to be able to, like I said, achieve that perfection if necessary. So all that is kind of technology driven now. It's all everything is born from technology. Now the job of a commercial artist, my question then is like, will it die from technology? Meaning, will uh, the job basically will technology kind of like take it away and say, okay, now we don't need the artist anymore, we don't need the commercial artist anymore. Okay, that profession is turning into something, and that which would lead me to AI. And everybody, I'm sure, out there has heard of what artificial intelligence, and everything that is being used for us. And in the art world, it's been taking over in the commercial and too, where they can plug something in and says, we need this, we need these certain things, graphics, so we don't have to do it no more. No more is there a guy or gal punching something in to make this happen. The AI just takes over and gets it to a certain point, as long as someone feeds them those parameters. So it kind of cuts out the middleman of the artist, and just like the director, the person that put the campaign together, said, this is what we want. This is like develop. They talk to Lady Google and say, you do this. So that's kind of scary in a way, for especially for us artists, is that. And uh and it's not just in the visual arts or the commercial art area. It's seeping into all of, and the word seeping is a pretty good word, I think. It's kind of like little by little, it's, they're starting to use it more and more for those kinds of situations. And we'll get into that as we go. Yeah, avatars. Now, look at avatars or say, well, that's not really a copycat, but it kind of is. With They're using that copycat, and they're kind of melding the actual, it's an extension of reality. It's a computer generated copycat of who you are, and it just takes it and says, this is going to be okay, enhances and different things. So you might say the AI is being an artist and kind of painting you within the concept of an avatar. I would love to do a lot of avatars personally. I would like to use that, but I would I would want to do avatars as an artist. I would want to work with another artist within the visual arts, that maybe somebody that does commercial art, something that is able to develop avatars and manipulate them and put them in scenarios and different things like that, and use them from music videos. Um, and keep the humanity in it still. So that's another. We'll get to that as we get towards the end of this program. Is how to keep the humanity involved. But right now, it's like avatars. You on Facebook, you can have your profile pic. You plug it into they plug it into an AI situation, and it comes back with an avatar. It kind of looks like you. Then you have little, do you want to be this kind of an avatar, that kind of avatar? So they give you choices for that, and it's like, okay. So I mean, that's cute, and it's, I see people doing it, and it's fun. Okay, still it makes it fun, but at that point, is that art? Is that artist in the entire artificial intelligence vehicle? That person that is that artificial person, is that person an artist? So I don't know. Uh, so looking at, and also automation, the concept of automation, and assembly line in general, uh, presses, things like that can copy. Like you go to an assembly line of an automobile or whatever, that kind of thing is like everything fits and move, and everything is made to be exactly the same, and it works for things like automobiles, but does it work that way for songs? It's kind of like, okay, here it is, we want 30 songs that sound exactly alike. No, we don't want that. Okay, so we want, but what's happening now is they're injecting the AI and the AI listens to all these songs and is able to spit out some kind of a, like an what it's adaptation. And I've heard some, it's really crazy stuff. Like they'll say, well, we want to, you plug in and we want a love song that sounds a little like this little, you could plug it in and program it so that it writes a song that sounds like this, melodies and everything, the whole schmear. They can instrumentalize it and arrange it and put it all together and spit it out. And here's the song. Now, I don't know. So far I've heard a few, and I'm not impressed by, but it's kind of very weird. It's like it just doesn't have the humanity. And maybe someday they will, and that'll be another story, and that'll be another chapter. But right now, it's like automation and just if you think about it, the technology has driven that from originally in the like in the romantic period, painting. They were just starting to get with prints. They were doing prints of paintings and things like that, being able to copy that, make especially with posters. We talked about Lautrec and all that, and there's some prints that he was into prints too, because obviously he wanted to duplicate these posters some so he can hang them in different areas or whatever if he made a poster for somebody. So that all evolved into what it is to where it's that perfection, the speed and everything to duplicate. So you can get a duplicate of a Renoir that you can buy in the museum, whatever it is, the bookstore and the museum or whatever, the art museum, the gift store, and you know, $5 you get a kind of like a small replica of a Renoir or something. So it's there's money to be made there, that's for sure. And whenever there's money to be made, somebody's gonna figure out a way to accomplish that. And but it's not art, obviously. So we're looking to try to keep the humanity within it and to in the duplication as well. So but it's something you might want to have. You might want to have just a small little, reminder of that painting you saw. Yeah. Um, so automation affects that as well. Getting into theater and film directly, and we're talking about AI and the possibilities for that is like scripts being written by AI. Like it's the same thing as like what I talked about with songs. It's same thing. It's like especially if it's on a level where it's commercial. You can have just you had how many times have you heard like yeah, it sounds like a robot narrating a YouTube video. It's like just some kind of you plug in and you could type in, this is what I want you to say, and then it spits out, the AI will spit out, and from my perspective, it usually doesn't do a very good job of reflecting like a human voice when you get to it. It's like even when I do the Lady Google thing, you could tell it's kind of robotic. There's no nuance to it, and now obviously the interaction, but that's all. They're working on that. They're working on a lot of aspects of that. And I follow a little bit with the science behind all it, but right now we're just going to keep it within this realm and how it's affecting the art. So yes, you can imagine it's like certain scripts being eventually written by AI. And my question next is, will actors be replaced? Now we're bringing in avatars. Obviously, there was that movie Avatar. So I mean, if it's specific to that kind of use, um, if you look through animation, and I'm fascinated with animation, and I'm a big fan of the different styles of animation. Going back to what was it? Peter was it? Peter Rabbit. I forget that whether it was that one. That was great. And it kind of combined the actual actors with cartoon characters and how they put it all together. What happened to Roger Rabbit? Roger Rabbit. That's what it was. And looking back to Ralph Bashki films and all that, I really loved that. And a lot of that was kind of semi-realistic, and he had ways of doing like an avatar type figures in his movie and in his movies. Um, so yeah, the development of animation to a point to where animation can become reality or reflect or be that impersonate the actual actors and that. So, I mean, this is all interesting stuff, but things you think about as you're getting involved is like, oh, okay, is there if you're thinking about your art as being making a living for you, it's like, okay, if you're getting into commercial art right now, you have to be the one that's going to be programming it. Okay, the middleman's being cut out. So, I mean, that's in a lot of professions. You got to realize. Looking back at my dad, he was in offset printing, um, and those jobs started going away. I had a really good friend too that was involved with that, and it just became the automation, and it just there was no room for the job. He was like a plate maker. He actually made my dad made the plates that they took and put into the machine for the in the printer, the big printer and stuff like that. So he would make the plates, and offset he worked with chemicals and etching. It's kind of etching lithography in that sense. So that's what he did, and then he made the plate. But now there's that kind of stuff is if there's it's more like an art. People still do those types of reprints more within the artistic realm. There's still a little bit of that, but there's the viability of it, of you getting a job for a printing company as a plate maker. I don't know how many of those are left. Somebody can maybe tell me if people are still doing that. But I remember, like my dad got laid off because it consolidated, but there were still jobs for it. So he was able to get back in. And, but that's another story, longer story on my personal life, but and my family life. But yeah, will actors be replaced? Well, you got to keep thinking about in all these arts is like when where uh, will stagehands be replaced completely by automation? Well, I'm sure there's a bunch of that going on in theater. Um, Okay, how will live theater? That's what. Next question I had is how will live theater, the live theater experience change? Um, because obviously it's still and to be honest with you, and you could probably most theater people will say there really isn't a lot of money to be made by putting on a major theater production, and whether it be Broadway or anything like that. It's very seldom that somebody will come out ahead or much out ahead. I mean, there's a community of people that are keeping that art alive. There's philanthropists, like we say, and then there's corporations, and then, like that that donate. There's grants and all that. So it affects the art too. It's all of a sudden when there's a lot of money coming into an artistic situation. Like I said, if somebody hires me to write a song, they're expecting me to write the song that they want. It isn't like, well, I'm going to write a song that I want. And you're going to take it and you're going to pay me. No, it gets to be that where you like to think that the philanthropists and the corporations and the government funds that you get and all that do not affect your artistic integrity. But in the end, I'd make the argument that they do. You're not going to do there are certain things or not certain subjects. You're not going to. It's just like media. Media is funded by advertisers. So you don't report news, you don't do programs that are going to offend your advertisers because then they're going to pull money. Money, money, money. Okay? So it's all about money. So the art is no longer just free to be a freedom. There's no freedom of expression beyond certain limits. So you have to maintain those limits. So yeah, so the theater, going back to the theater, well, the experience, like I said, once that funding's lost, or once that group of people shrinks to a point, will we really have live theater on the scale that we have it now? you know, I would argue that there will still be small pockets of it, and that becomes part of this general renaissance, this artistic, the new renaissance that I introduced early on in the series of discussions. We talked about the grassroots renaissance, so that grassroots needs to maintain that, and that's that's the concept of folk. The folk tradition is to don't let certain musics die, or don't let certain forms of art die just because they're not popular, because there's artistic value that runs through them. So we're going to maintain that, and on the grassroots, and not as a just a kind of, well, we got to maintain, we got to keep this going, and you're not into it, because there are generally people that respect the art and understand the value of the art, and I believe there will always be a certain amount of people because it's not going to be about money. It's not going to be, I'm going to make money with this. As soon as you say, yeah, I'm going to make money with this, then it changes the whole landscape. So the grassroots artistic thing that we're talking about right here is just about us maintaining, okay, art that we love. Okay, stuff that we don't, obviously somebody else might, whatever. So it'll all be very subjective on that level. So okay, moving into music, more into music, and interjecting that. I've talked about it in past presentations. We talked about cover music and tribute bands. Obviously, tribute band could come in various forms too. I've been around that a lot. I'm also sound engineer, so I've done sound for lots of different tribute bands through the years. It's nothing new. There were tribute bands going way back, or really a cover band. Difference between a cover band and a tribute band. In case anybody out there is confused between those two connotations, or denotations, I should say. Um, Cover band isn't dedicated to one artist or one genre or whatever. It just does music, songs that are usually popular. If you're going to be a cover band, you're going to do it pop, because the reason you're getting a cover band together for two, it could be two reasons. One, the number one reason would be we're trying to go out there and make some money. We're musicians that are talented. We're well crafted musicians. We're going to go out there. We know how to play songs. We can play any song. We put it together, and there are people in the band are people that can learn songs real quick, throw songs in, do whatever you can, and play as many songs as you can, so that when you go, you take a job. Yeah, we know how to play that. We know how to play that. We do different styles. So the ultimate cover bands are the ones that can do every style, and they can do a lot of different songs in each of the styles. So that's a cover band. Lots of people call tribute bands cover bands. Now they are covering material, but they're very specific to an artist or sometimes a genre. Like I'll go back to one of the original tribute style bands was Sha Na Na. Okay, Sha Na Na. Instead of trying to imitate each of the bands, they imitated the attitude and style. They were in like the late '60s, '70s, and that period. That's when they existed. But they did music from the '50s, early rock and roll stuff. They were in early rock and roll, and they dressed like early rocker, or like neighborhood rock and roll types, whatever it is, greaser type things. I remember the one guy, he looked like, whatever, slick back hair, kind of a thing that was kind of more indigenous, representative of the '50s culture in as far as wardrobe and look and hair and all that kind of stuff. So they did that, and they tried, and there were a lot of '50s bands back in that day. In the '70s, there were a lot of '50s bands. If you think about it, I mean, right now, we're in the '20s, if somebody was doing music for 2000, it would be like oldies kind of a thing, but it's like it doesn't have that same effect. That back then, in those days, it was like, if the night something from 1955, if you did it in '75, that sounded old, and it was like, oh, what do we call it? Uh, reminiscing to the old days or something. Where, like I said, 20 years ago, music from 20 years ago, people aren't thinking, oh, the old good old days, unless you're young and you're thinking, well, that was before I was born or whatever. So, as this is all perspective. But just to give you an example, they were not trying to imitate one act. They were tribute to that era. So you'll have people that are tribute to the like '60s, and was it? There's a band in Houston called Molly and the Ringwalds. I thought it was a great name. Um, I don't know. Somebody out there might be watching. I've seen the band before, but they did like '80s kind of like what do you call it? Gen X growing up kind of music, '80s. Obviously Molly Ringwald was the actress in that movie, that whole movie genre of did they call no, that wasn't the Brad Pack. Brad Pack's the old Sinatra and his guys. What did they call them? I don't know. Don't want to dwell, but you get the pictures. They were doing music from that era, kind of that '80s, kind of more synth based kind of music, you could tell the technologies that were used during those times, and the grooves, and that kind of thing. So there's a whole '80s music genre kind of thing that they were, so they'll have bands to that, and then obviously you have your bands that imitate now, and there's two types of those too. So you'll have tribute bands that will do the music and try to copy the music as perfect as you can. Get it to it's those are the licks used. That's the sound. Those are the instrumentation and all that. And we're going to get the sound so everybody listens and says, "Wow, that sounds just like." I know there's a couple of Steely Dan impersonator bands, and it's like, um, you know, it's not easy music to reproduce, so it's impressive. Whereas you see a Stones tribute band, not to put any, I'm a Stones fan, but it's basic rock and roll. It's not, it doesn't have the intricacies of the music that, let's say, a Steely Dan band would need to have, or when you can go into a John Coltrane or whatever. I mean, it's like the heavy jazz or something. If you did every note the same, it would be insane. So, but I say, just to give you an example of two, so that, whereas if you did, like I said, if you did a Rolling Stones band and it did sound like the Stones, yeah, I guess that's impressive, in a way. But I think more you'd expect a Stones impersonation because of the spectacle that the Stones present, the stage spectacle. Like, you'd have to have somebody that looks like Mick Jagger, kind of, being in that position, dressing like them, dancing like them. So there's that pure tribute act where you actually you find people that you represent the characters or the band members, that impersonate the band members. They look a little like them, or however, especially the Beatles in tribute bands, are that way. That you have to look like the Beatles. I got my buddy. I got a couple buddies in the Fab Five, which is a local kind of Houston-based band, and they do like 80% maybe Beatles music, and then they'll do some Paul Revere, and they'll have costumes that do like other British Invasion kind of things, but they're mainly a Beatles cover band. And there's actually three or four in the area. I don't know, a couple of them are defunct, but I know there's at least two of them still rolling, and they're all over the place. And it's whatever. Like they're still popular, they're still making money. So God bless them. And so anyway, so you got those tribute bands that they look like, but I mean the ones that people play, it doesn't really matter as long as you got the instrumentation right and you got everything. It doesn't matter if you look like Donald Fagen or something. Like, don't have to have that look. Maybe there's bands that are doing that are doing that, but because of the complication in the music, it's like people don't. And I think the type of people that listen to it aren't much more into. They're not into the spectacle. They're into the music side of it more, the musicianship of somebody that's able to do those songs, those great songs that that band had, and be able to do the music and being able to do the intricacies of music. So so you got the different, which is a different audience. So what audience, as we taught you, got to understand your audience as you go as well. Now, the pervasiveness of of the tribute bands and the cover bands and all this. Like I said, it's not new, but it's increasing. It's been to the point where um, the originality of the music scene, there's not a whole lot of room because there's just X amount of gigs, and the gigs are there's less gigs. It's ebb and flow. Obviously, the pandemic crashed the whole scene. The whole scene. Few places opened back up. Few people got back in. That kind of a thing. There's some new places. It's like it's starting to bubble up again. But as it's bubbling up again, you're seeing most of the places that are they want to hear, and they have audiences that really a lot of the places don't even care. Some of the smaller venues now that have live music, it's just a thing to say we have live music. So, it's another reason that, oh, they have live music, let's go there. But they expect to hear the Stones, Steely Dan, or not so much even the tribute, but a cover band, the live music. Yeah, they're doing AC/DC, they're doing Foreigner, they're doing whatever, they're doing you know uh, Hank Williams and Johnny Cash and whatever. So wherever you're at in that spectrum of genres, whichever genres, but there's people that want to hear this familiar music, and you can't blame them. In a way, that's the music you grew up with, and however that works. But there's always been a market for new music, and I would argue that it's dwindling on the commercial level to where, and we've talked about it, and don't want to get too much into the um, online presence, that the opportunities that you have online, and everything's becoming swamped down there. So there's lots going on. People, an average music listeners, they say, "Oh, I'm just gonna turn on the same old shit," and that, which will get us into our next quick discussion on that. And when I say SOS, and I mean the same old stuff, the same old shit. You can interject one or the other for that. So, but yeah, as we move uh, on the industry level, let's say in music, um, it behooves the holder of publishing to continue pushing the classic formats, the system of classic rock or classic country legends, this and that. Um, it isn't so much geared towards it's what the public wants to hear. It's a circular thing. The public want to hear it because it keeps coming around, and as young people come up, they're being exposed to the older music. Now, in a way, it's maybe a lot of people say, well, that's good because that music was good and all that kind of thing. And so a lot of young people will hook onto that, which is okay, but that's not the reason that all the older music is being kind of redone, not redone, just replayed constantly. If you go on the radio, it's like all these stations are playing the same old shit over and over again for the last lot of stuff for 50 years has been the same old stuff. And the reason is because the people in charge of everything hold the publishing, meaning the royalties coming in. I mean, there's songwriters that receive royalties, but the publishing is where it's at because you can own 100 songwriters' catalogs and rake in the money on every time something gets played on the radio. Now there's also the squabble about um, uploads, streams. There's not much money being made off of streams, but to be honest, off of this all that old music and stuff, there's been tons of money made, and it's we're talking in the commercial side, like that's what's happening. So if you're wondering, why that keeps going, it isn't because, well, the kids want to hear it. No, the kids are hearing it because it behooves the holders of the publishing to put it out there. So when you play, like I said, this is what I'm saying. It's you play it to death and keep reviving it as often as possible. Right? Just guy beating it's like, oh, it beat, you beat it to death. It's like, come on, wake up, we need you again. Like just keep reviving it and making sure that keeps going. Will we still hear let's say Freebird 50 years from now? Will we still hear that? I would argue, depending on how the legality of all the publishing holdings are, if it's still in that realm, it's going to be pushed and it's going to be heard. And it's a good enough song to probably hold up for a while, unless the whole genre folds where that oldies thing is not a thing anymore. So maybe that's going to be part of our renaissance. It's kind of like saying, let's start making it more viable for people that are willing to invest in that. And then again, the investors are the ones that sometimes control. So we as artists have to do it on our own. And if you're going to write songs, you write songs on your own. If you're going to write a novel, you might have somebody sponsoring you, and it's like you have to make sure you don't insult the sponsors. So whatever your art is, you have to get to a point to where you understand the different of the effects that you have upon you from the outside, the influence that is you're sitting in a bubble that you want to burst that bubble and be free as an artist to create what you feel is needing to be said, needing to be representative, and talk about whatever you think and bust out there and become the artist that you can be. So we're looking at that. The last thing within the music is the long time practice, and this is of syndicated radio programming. It's a couple different things there. You have syndicate and TV. You have syndicated shows, meaning it's one show that broadcast to every station on every station. So and the big networks in that on TV and networks of radio used to be where most of the radio stations 40, 50 years ago were owned locally. There were some major stations that you'd affiliate with CBS maybe, and there were certain stations that did that, but stations were basically owned. There weren't a whole lot of conglomerates like there are now. Now everything is like this. There's a station in Boston that's owned by the station in Houston that's owned by the station, and it's a corporate, beyond US. I mean, they're worldwide corporations that own stations. So what's happening is that they program somebody in LA programs for somebody in Montana, or Madison, Wisconsin, or Chicago, Illinois, or Florida, whatever. It's one programming, and if you notice, it's increasingly. If anybody's been around for a long time, you'll notice that back in the day, back in let's say the 60s and 70s, good example, you would have on radio, you'd have local artists get some airplay on radio. So it was like, that's a local homegrown some people, and they play them occasionally. And if people loved the song, it got into the top 10 locally. Like I was thinking, back in Chicago, it was WLS and WCFL, 2 AM big hit radio stations and stuff. So you'd get that where all of a sudden they play the Buckinghams, which was a local area, and eventually they charted. They started making it onto the chart, and then that had helped the Buckinghams to become, get major label representation and move on, and then they got airplay all over because so it grew from a local to national to international. So if you were a band or a person that was able to develop locally in that. Now, people would say, well, if you want to make it, you got to go to LA. Yeah, if you want to make it on the macro level, but on the, I don't want to even call it micro. If you're doing like a a market like Chicago or Atlanta or Houston, even, uh, that's a decent market. There's lots of people hearing you, so you're going to move from there. Now that doesn't happen. There's some independent stations, but they have the leader, the listenership is not, like I say, if you take the country legend station in Houston here, and you take KPFT, the listenership is like 20, 30 to 1, or even more, just because because of the marketing engine, because of the fact that they're playing the same old shit. There's reasons, beyond whatever reason. There's reasons beyond reason for that. So anyway, so this actual programming, they'll send their program list out, and every station in that corporation has to play that program list. So it's the same 10 songs that you're going to hear over and over again on the same stations all across the country. And we can get into Canadian radio, that they have a law there that says that X amount. I don't know I forgot what the percentage is. Was it 50%? At least half of all music being played on Canadian radio stations have to be locally, or not locally, but nationally. Nationally? What's the word I'm looking for? Indigenously produced. That's the wrong word too. Anyway, so that's another thing that kind of brings up that you're hearing the same stuff over and over again, and the direction is the same. So the idea here, to finish up, I'm going to talk about. We have to figure out strategies to keep and bring the humanity back into the arts. Not that, like I said, on the grassroots level, we kind of have that, but we want to be able, as we're getting the music out, we don't want the influence of outer influences to crush us. We could talk about censorship, and we will talk about censorship more as we discuss other issues as well. But we want to be able to keep the human spirit, keep the social consciousness of our music. What we decide is going to represent our art the best, and we have to keep working towards that. And that's our humanity interjecting beyond the AI, beyond the technology, beyond everything. That's what's going to keep art moving ahead and viable for ourselves. In last statement I'll make is, although it's still out there, the question is it being relevant? Although, like I just said, there's still great art out there in this grassroots, and some of it, we're hearing, like I know that people that know me, and I know a lot of artists, like songwriters and performers, mostly. That's kind of where I'm at, my influence. They're out there, and some are doing okay, some are doing, but we're just trying to get our art heard by more people, and we want it to be relevant. We want the art to be relevant and have somewhat of a effect on culture, which is one of the themes of this general series of presentations that I'm giving. So yeah, is it becoming irrelevant? Is our art, swimming in a sea of irrelevance right now? But are we working? That's why we have to work as communities and there are people, definitely, I run into people all the time that are trying to, and through the years I've been involved with groups that have tried to move it, and but right now we're being pushed down. You got to accept the fact that we're in a world where it's about the money. It always kind of has been, but there's always been opportunities, and there's always been that scene. But with the way things are consolidating, like I said, it's the conglomerates own the vehicles for us to get our art out there. We have to keep museums open, viable, and accepting, and not have too much influence, like I said, by the sponsors, and the advertisers and everybody else that's involved. And we have to have the artists allow them to grow as artists. And let's stop listening to the same old shit. Once in a while, it's good to hear an oldie and all that. And I relish that as well. That's all good. But let's promote the arts that are around us. And we'll talk to you again next week. I'm here every Sunday. Tell your friends that like to view podcasts. Let them know about the channel. I think this is interesting stuff. I think to just about anybody that has any interest in understanding the arts and a little bit of nuts and bolts and the relationship between all the arts, because that's what we're putting in together. We're no different as visual artists, as dancers, as actors, as directors, as songwriters, as musicians. We need to be a larger community and not be so cobbled into our own little world here, that we need to break into each other's worlds and collaborate too. And that's one of the keys. All right, this is Folky Zeus. We'll see you next time, next Sunday, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time.